Well, welcome to the Dole Institute of Politics. My name is Ava Levin, and I am a sophomore studying political science and Spanish on the pre-law track here at KU. This is my second year on the Student Advisory Board and my first as a discussion group coordinator. My time at the Dole Institute has been enjoyable. Two of my favorite experiences from last semester were receiving the Director's Award for volunteering at the annual student banquet and participating in the counselors program with Washburn Law students to discuss the morality of medical aid in dying. The Dole Institute of Politics strives to promote a new era of leadership that uses politics to bring people together through opportunities that emphasize bipartisan cooperation, public service, and civic education and engagement, all of which is inspired by the leadership and service of Senators Bob and Elizabeth Dole and the enduring civic contributions of the greatest generation. The Student Advisory Board is an integral part of this mission, providing members with experiential learning and job opportunities, access to financial assistance, and networking opportunities with our special guests. If you are a student here at KU and would like to join, please email us at dolesab@ku.edu or speak with a student worker after the program. Before we begin, there are a few reminders I'd like to take a moment to share with you. Following tonight's program, a video recording will be available to stream on demand on our YouTube channel, where you can access a full catalog of our past programming. A loop hearing system is available to use if you have a T-coil hearing aid. The Institute also has a limited number of listening devices. If you have questions about the loop system, or if at any time have difficulty hearing, please alert one of our staff members. Please take a moment to familiarize yourself with the marked exits in the room. In the event of an emergency, please make your way to the nearest marked exit. Please follow the instructions of staff members and exit the building if necessary. Following tonight's interview, a limited number of audience questions will be answered. If you are part of our virtual audience, you can submit questions via email at dolequestions@ku.edu. The Dole Institute aims to foster civil, and respectful discussion around important and often difficult topics. Please phrase your question with this in mind. Finally, I'd like to remind you to please silence your cell phones or place them on Do Not Disturb. Now, please join me in welcoming Director Audrey Coleman.
Thank you, Ava. Thanks so much for being with us, everyone, for this afternoon and our kickoff of our discussion series for this fall. It's a pleasure to see you as always. And before I introduce our fellow for the fall and her guests, I want to be sure and invite you back to the Dole Institute for a few events that we have coming up in the coming days. So please plan to join us on September 16th at 10 a.m. We're excited to host the Kansas State Court of Appeals in honor of Constitution Day. They will hear oral arguments here at the Dole Institute for an audience, including the general public. Plan to be here in person. That event will be not available on our live stream. Make plans to join us on September 23rd at 7 p.m. We will welcome former Dole Fellow Karen Willey. She will be in conversation with Kansas State Senator Kenny Titus and Kansas State Representative Lindsey Vaughn, who are members of the Kansas Water Program Task Force. They'll be discussing water and sustainability efforts, policy developments as they're working on a bipartisan basis this year and prepare to report at the beginning of January. And then plan to join us for our second installment of our discussion group series on September 24th at 4 p.m. here in the afternoon, turning research policy solutions and civic engagement into results for Kansas women. Our guest will be United Women's Empowerment Chief Executive Officer Wendy Doyle, who will be discussing the nonprofit work her organization is doing to support women and helping their communities and economies succeed. And I see a number of gentlemen in the audience. I will remind you that women's issues are issues that you can discuss too. So I plan to see you back here in a couple of weeks for that discussion. Now it's my pleasure to introduce to you our Fall 2025 Dole Fellow, who is hosting our series this fall, Lessons in Leadership from the Front Lines of Public Service. Joni Wickham is a best-selling author and co-founder of the legal, political, and communications consulting firm Wickham James. She previously served as Chief of Staff to our guest today, Kansas City Mayor Sly James. Joni has worked with the American Federation of Teachers, Missouri Department of Transportation, and with Missouri Secretary of State Robin Carnahan. In 2019, she received the University of Missouri School of Public Affairs Carnahan Public Service Award, and in 2023 was named in the Kansas City Business Journal's class of women who mean business. Joni, it's a pleasure to turn it over to you to introduce your guest, and thank you so much for being here and being our fellow this fall.
Thank you, Audrey. It's a pleasure to be here. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, early evening. Such a pleasure to see each and every one of you here. Thank you for coming out to gather with us, think with us, talk with us, convene with us. It's my honor and pleasure to have former Kansas City Mayor Sly James here. You all are in for a treat, so buckle up. You probably have already discerned that he has an amazing sense of humor, candor, and authenticity, so I'm really excited about this discussion that we're going to have. A native of Kansas City, Sly served as mayor from 2011 to 2019, during which time he led the city's transformation through major initiatives, including the development of the new terminal at MCI, which is why I have gray hair, wrinkles, high blood pressure. He also helped create our modern streetcar system and North America's very first smart city project. He previously served as a trial attorney and is a veteran of the U.S. Marine Corps. His advocacy and leadership have garnered him many awards, including the American Graduate Champion of Education, that I know means a lot to him because education's a really pivotal issue for him, and Government Technology's Top 25 Doers, Dreamers, and Drivers. After leaving office in 2019, he and I co-founded our public affairs consulting firm, Wickham James Strategies and Solutions, and I continue to keep him employed there. So, thank you.
I just want to say it's so nice to hear your boss saying such good things about you in public.
Boss, yes.
And would you folks mind if I took this jacket off? I wore it out of respect, but I don't see anybody else here wearing no damn jacket. I think, if you don't mind. I'd like to be a little bit looser.
All right.
Hard to believe, I know.
Okay.
Let me just say before we go on that she gets to say nice things about me, and I always insist on saying nice things about her because she deserves it. The things that we were able to accomplish when I was in office are largely attributable to the work of Joni, my chief of staff, and before that, chief communications officer. She is a unique woman in a lot of different ways, and I have been somewhat fortunate to know. Oh, I took my microphone off, didn't I?
See what he does without staff? He can't live without us. Yeah.
That's really good. But I think you could probably hear me anyhow. But I've been blessed to have a lot of strong women involved in my life, so I appreciate her. So thanks for the good words, but she's in great, she's very deserving of all the praise that she gets.
Okay, take us back into ancient political history. And you started running for mayor in 2019 and then won in 2011. And observers were struck by how civil your campaign was. Sly ran against Kansas City, Missouri civic leader Mike Burke. And even your toughest critics were struck by how civil that campaign was, and you even won a national award for that campaign. Talk to us a little bit about how the two of you managed to stay so cordial.
Well, I knew Mike. Mike was a lawyer, I was a lawyer. We had been running in similar circles. I'd been president of the Bar Association a few years before that and got to know him in that capacity. And we had just been around each other well enough to know that we liked each other, respected each other, and I was aware of what he was doing in the city. I think he was aware of what I was doing in the city, so it was mutual respect. During the campaign, Mike and I met. We talked about why we were running, which was important. We agreed that we were both running for the same basic reason, that we really thought that there were some things that we could do in the city that would enhance its image, that would enhance its vitality, that would enrich its ethnicity, that would create some equities that would move us forward in a way that we needed to move forward if we were going to compete with other cities. And we also agreed how we would run our campaigns. We agreed there would be no nonsense, there would be no mudslinging, there would be no problems, there would be no negativity, because we didn't run in order to beat each other, we ran in order to serve our city. And when you don't run trying to beat somebody, you don't have to be a jerk. Okay, in today's politics, everybody's wanting to beat somebody, win some contest, and totally forget that that's not the reason they should be running in the first place. Either you can do the job or not. So Mike and I agreed that we wanted to both work in the city, and regardless of who won, we would try to find ways to call upon each other for whatever skills, talents, or efforts we were able to give. So when I won, a moment that Mike's wife celebrated greatly.
True story.
I asked, yeah, he constantly told me, I'm so glad you won. I thought, well, that's not what I was hoping to hear, but okay. So I asked Mike to chair the committee that brought Google to Kansas City, along with people from Kansas City, Kansas, so we could have a bi-state working product. He put together over a course of a year a plan to utilize Google in order to enhance our entrepreneurial and technology areas that is still in use today. I asked him to chair a program to look at how we could use the arts better in terms of arts education, in terms of its economic impact, find out what the arts community needed, how we could advance our arts situation more. And he put together a project and a paper that's still available that we still use, and it was outstanding. So I saw no reason to create a foe who had talent, wanted to help the city over a campaign, and he didn't either, and that's how we got along.
When you took over in 2011, objectively speaking, the city had been stagnant for a while. Tell the audience a little bit about how you established your leadership vision and rallied the community around where you were going to take the city.
The city hadn't just been stagnant, the city had been embarrassed. I mean, I'll never forget the infamous Tales from the Double Wide, where the mayor's prostate exam was described in writing for the world to see by his wife, which was alternately funny and tragic. We had too many lawsuits coming out of City Hall. The city council had passed an ordinance to ban his family from City Hall. Those were the things that were making the headlines. There was nothing about anything new in terms of educational, social, or economic development upturns that were promising. It was a very negative time. So I told people, and I tell people, I was the surprise recipient of serendipitous circumstances. Things were so bad that even I could be seen as an alternate and a good change. And the city council was so pent up wanting to actually do what they had come to City Hall to do that I was able to work with them to get that done. But the one thing that we did know is that before you can change action, you have to change your attitude. I firmly believe that if you want to sit here right now and make yourself feel sad, you can talk yourself into it. You just have to get into your head and find a bunch of sad things to feel bad about. You want to go giddy, you can do the same thing. If it's all in your head, so if you want to succeed, you have to start thinking and understanding that you change your attitude to believe you can succeed. And at that time, Kansas City was a city that never missed an opportunity to miss an opportunity. And we simply had to talk about it. We simply had to start pointing out the really good things about Kansas City and getting people to believe. And then we needed some small victories that we could wave up and act like we had just scored the touchdown in the Super Bowl and get everybody believing, yeah, we might be able to do that. We certainly can do that. And when you start getting people into an attitude of we can as opposed to, oh, we can't, we can becomes unlimited, you know? Somebody said to me one time, you should always ask yourself what you would do if you could do whatever you wanted and there was nobody to stop you. That's what we aspired to do. We also knew that there were some people to stop us.
I remember when Sly first started saying, if you're gonna change your actions, you have to start with your attitude and changing your attitude. And I thought that was an interesting saying, and it was an interesting belief to guide the leadership vision. And then maybe around circa 2014, 2015, we started seeing the Heart KC shirts everywhere. We started seeing KC on bumper stickers. We started seeing KC on hats. And I thought, oh my gosh, he's onto something. He was right. So dig a little bit deeper in that for us in terms of leadership. Why is attitude and changing attitude so important when you're talking about leadership culture and when folks are trying to create community change?
If you have an attitude that things are never going to get better or things are really bad and I'm stuck in this rut, you're not going to invest in the future. And in order to move a city forward, you've got to have citizens that are willing to unite behind certain causes and willing to make an investment in the future. And I know people don't like to talk about taxes, yada, 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 but cities simply can't get a second job and go out and make a little extra money on the weekends. And the things that everybody pays taxes for, with taxes set 15, 20 years ago, those taxes are trying to buy things that now cost things, prices far that exceed what the taxes would have bought then. So there's a gap there. When I came into office and I met, well, before I came into office, I met with Troy Schulte, the city manager, and we talked about some of the things that we thought needed to be done. We both thought that the infrastructure had to be addressed. It's ugly. It's kind of like fixing up the pipes in your house that you want to sell, but you don't have money to put on the front porch and make it look pretty, but the pipes have to be fixed. And we were $2 billion behind in deferred maintenance. $2 billion. There was no way for us to catch up on that unless we did some drastic things. So in order to get people to invest in that kind of ain't sexy improvement, you have to be willing and able to show them there's a reason to make this investment that's going to benefit you, not the city. People don't really care too much about us. They do care about me, mine, and sometimes you have to make that transition to show how this will help them individually. So it's a slow slog, but it's absolutely essential to building a city for our kids. You know, that's what we're doing. We're not building cities for us. Some of us aren't going to be here to see the final product, and others that are not even here will see a heck of a lot more of it than we do. But all of those things matter when you're trying to build a city, and the attitude that you have will determine where you go. If you don't want to improve, if you don't have an attitude of constant learning, if you don't have a competitive attitude wanting to compete against other cities for things that you need in yours, then it doesn't matter what the project is. The attitude is going to lead to the behavior of, I don't care, let's not do anything. We were able to get people to do things.
So before Sly took over as mayor, he had a long career as an accomplished trial attorney and mediator. Talk to us a little bit about how that specific experience with mediation came in handy when you were mayor, because I recall it seems like every single day you were trying to mediate some sort of stakeholder disagreement. You were trying to build consensus so that we could get a certain policy issue passed.
You know, I think, in all honesty, I think mediation became a major part of my psyche long before then. I grew up in an all-black neighborhood. I went to an all-white high school. And every day I was in two different worlds. And I would sometimes carry friends from one world back into the other. And I found myself between those two friends trying to make sure that both understood what was going on between them. That's a process of mediation. It really starts with relationships. But being a lawyer, I always felt like there's a bedrock code of ethics and moralities that you're supposed to have as a lawyer. At least when I was going to law school, you did, and I think it's still true today. And so that was like the floor of what you could expect, but there were often times that would take you beyond that. Or in ways that you didn't expect in order to represent your client. So you had to mediate between clients as to what you could and couldn't do. Mediation is simply a process of trying to bring conclusion to some sort of conflict between two people or two sources. And so I did that, and that was part of my role as a lawyer. It was part of what I did on boards, but it's also something that I do for a part of our living now, and I enjoy it. But it's really just a matter of trying to find a way of bringing conflict. And practicing law was a great trainer in that, because the one thing that practicing, let me put it this way, I won't say practicing law. The education of law spends a lot of time talking to you and teaching you how to look at both sides of the subject, how to analyze a situation and make arguments on both sides. If you can do that, it's not just good in trial work, which I loved, but it's also good in mediation, because if you can look at the same situation and see both sides' arguments, then you might be able to see a middle point in there where those arguments could come together and you can resolve the issue. And that's what mediation is.
You often talk about your systems thinking approach to governing.
This is going to be a long one.
Be concise. We have more questions to cover.
It's going to be a long one.
What does systems thinking mean, and can you give us an example of how you used it, or maybe how you wish you had used it?
I think first we have to talk about what a system is, because I don't know if we all have the same idea of what a system is. We'll start with basic part. I mean, our body is a system. It has a nervous system. It has a circulatory system. It has different layers of skin, muscle, tissue, fascia. It has internal organs all in the same, and they're not the same things, but they work together in order to create life. Every system has an outward purpose, and the parts of that system join together in the ways they're supposed to create that purpose. But changing parts of a system can be beneficial when you're talking about things other than your body. But in a body, you can take a kidney out, but that's going to change your body, change your system to some extent, but you're not going to die. Can't do the same with the heart. So different parts have different values as well in how they work together. Take that same body, in a family, you got another system of a family. All the individuals are systems. The family itself is a system. Take that family into a community, same thing, it just keeps growing and growing. So it's a system, it's a collection of parts designed to reach a common purpose that work together in order to achieve it. Now, when you take those systems and you apply them to social or politics, then you have to look at those systems as well, because we all think that there should be changes in those systems. So by knowing the parts to those systems and analyzing those parts and how they work together, you might be able to find leverage points that you can use to change the system in a way that brings better results and less disadvantage. That's what systems thinking is all about. Looking at the parts, how they interact, how that system interacts with other systems in order to create the big system, and where you can change systems in order to achieve better results. And there's a thing about systems thinking that says, think slow, act fast. So you think about this a lot. You write it down a lot, you show the connections, and once you figure it out, then you act. In a city, when I first got there, I was not appreciative of the system in which I was. I did not fully and completely grasp that changes that we needed to make in a neighborhood might have some change in a different part of town, or a different system, or a different structure within the system. By systems thinking, we were able to start getting better results. It also requires facts and data. This isn't, there are some things where opinions matter, but we needed to have facts and data. So we created a data system called KC Stat. KC Stat collected data from our citizen satisfaction survey, business satisfaction survey, 911, 311, input all that data and data from outside sources, internal data from various departments, collated it, analyzed it, and said, these are areas where you can find some improvement. We then televised that on our channel, and we started the first year with bringing in just departments and looking at that data. That was ineffective at solving problems. It gave us a better baseline of where the departments were, but it didn't solve much. So we switched and went to looking at issues relative to council committees, neighborhood committee, infrastructure committee, finance committee, those things. So we have a neighborhood problem. Rather than looking at individual departments, we knew we need public works, we need heavy waste management, we need safety, we need water, we need this. So we brought them all together and said, here's the problem, you guys all have a part of it, let's figure out how to get this done. That started changing things because we looked at the system and we knew that by moving certain parts of the system around, we could achieve better results, which tied right into one of the E's on our 4E agenda of governmental efficiency.
So
Sorry, I told you it was going to be long.
that was not that bad. No, that was not that bad. So systems thinking really can be a conduit to transformational leadership,
Yes.
which is the title of our session tonight. And transformational leadership, we know it requires vision, discipline, facts and data, and community support. You have to have the totality of that recipe for success.
Yes.
Was there a part of that recipe that you felt like was more difficult to accomplish than the others?
Yes. I have an acronym for them. They're called CAVE people. C-A-V-E. It stands for Citizens Against Virtually Everything.
I know them. Tell us more.
If you wanted to pave a road, they wanted part of it to go in their front yard. And if it couldn't go in their front yard, then damn it, I'm not going to pay for it. Okay, what about your neighbors? Don't care. Yes, dealing with skeptics and cave people is always difficult. It requires a totally different strategy from when you're going out trying to build support with other groups. You can talk facts and data with them. Cave people don't care about facts and data. They care about me. I'm not paying for it. They're the people that believe when they pay taxes to the federal government, part of every rocket ship, plane, and thing that the government produces ought to be in their backyard, under their exclusive control. Now, you might think that there aren't such people who exist. I assure you, there are a lot of them. And they rear their head every time you come out public and say, hey, let's do this. We can't do that. Okay, so you have to overcome that. But then there's a point in your life where you realize, hey, wait a minute. There's only like 5 people out there yelling, and everybody's listening to them because they're loud. But there's really only 5 of them. So the loudest is not necessarily indicative of majority thought. So what you really have to do is learn how to deal with these cave folks in a nice, respectful way, but ignore every insult that they hurl and things that they do, and build your support amongst those people who believe something can and should be done. And one of the processes of doing that is you engage them in the decision-making process at some level at some time, so that when the product comes out, it's not your idea, it's our idea. And we are much more inclined to defend our idea as opposed to your idea. So that's how you combat it, but those are the ones that were the most difficult to deal with.
The description of our session describes transformational leadership as both exhilarating and exhausting. I've seen you exhausted at time to time. How did you manage those highs and lows that came with being mayor?
Well, sometimes you have them the same day.
Sometimes in the same hour.
In the same hour. I mean, that's one thing that I loved about the job and hated about the job, but one of the reasons that she and I do what we do is so that we don't have the same old all the time. Yeah, it's really a matter of just recognizing you always have to have a default position. This is really bad, but this is really great, but. And it's not necessarily a negative but, it's a but you have to get back to the center and recognize you're gonna have highs and lows. Secondly, I think over a period of time as an adult, we have learned to deal with highs and lows in our own way. I had my way of dealing with it. Involved a lot of scotch and cigars, but I have my ways of dealing with it. You know, I'm trying to think. I remember a day when I had a really big low was I got a call. I used to get calls from cops in the middle of the night saying there's been a murder here or something here. Two things. One was a family had lost 2 or 3 kids. No, one kid, another kid had been shot. In a drive-by shooting, the kid had been shot while lying in his bed, and I'm there at 3 o'clock in the morning. That's low. If you want to feel bad, if you want to understand how great life is, go stand in a crowd where there's a mother crying and basically disintegrating before your eyes because her 2 or 3-year-old child has been shot for no good cause and is now gone. You watch that and you can't help but feel horrible. On the other hand, after a year running at about 22% percentage rate and 7 years of working on the airport and then seeing it pass by 72%, that's a high. So yeah, you bounce off of each of them, but you keep defaulting back to one basic understanding is regardless of whether this is good or bad, the work isn't done. We still need to continue to do things, and you default back to your agenda. 4 E's, that's what you ran on, that's what you're trying to do. It's a systematic way of approaching some of the ills that we've got. It all works together. So this is great, but let's get back to work. This really sucks, but let's get back to work. If you don't do that, then you'll just be bouncing around like a ping pong ball. And after 4 years of that, you'll be ready for a loony bin. And I ain't ready to go yet.
Yet.
Although I'm getting a lot closer. This is my boss here.
Dealing with the public can be complicated.
Yeah.
Human-centered work is complex. How did you keep your ability to inspire the public for 8 years with all of those highs and lows that you talked about?
Well, I don't know. I like to talk to people. I do a lot of talking to people. I don't generally try to put on any airs. I'm pretty much a here I am, and sometimes a little bit of sly can be an awful lot. But at the end of the day, I think that I always have fairly decent relationships with people, and I don't believe in BSing people. And if somebody asks me something, whether I agree or disagree, and they want an answer, I'll give them an answer, and I'll give them an answer that fits with my personality, my beliefs. And generally, they'll accept it without getting angry or anything, or they'll understand it, whatever the case may be. I just try to be me. But I came into this thing as mayor thinking, I've got maybe 4 or 8 years to do something that really shows off what Kansas City could be. And that was always in the back of my mind. And I used to have a saying there used to be a saying in the Marine Corps that you could stand on your head for 2 hours if you absolutely had to. You can do whatever you have to do in order to get the job done. And then another saying, basically 2 sayings that run my life. One was in the Marine Corps, improvise, adapt, and overcome. And Lord knows we had to learn to improvise, adapt, and overcome in office every day, sometimes every hour, but always. And the other is you can't go wrong by doing right, which my father taught me. So as long as I kept those 2 things in mind, I was able to pretty much get along, but I do not have the intelligence to be able to look at somebody and lie to them and then remember the lie I told them when I lied to them again in a year.
It's freeing.
It's what?
It's freeing to not set yourself up for that.
Yeah, sometimes it is. No, it can have the opposite effect. Depends on who you're talking to.
During your time in office, we ran 18 elections in 8 years, won 16 of them. That's unheard of. What do you credit that success at the ballot box with, and what did you learn from those 2 very painful losses?
The successes, I think, were basically starting with things that made people feel better and understanding why it was important that we continue to grow as a city and why it was important to them individually that we continue to grow as a city. And then having a few early successes and making them really look like they were Super Bowl winning kicks and promising that there would be more as long as we hung together and presenting a vision that, one thing I used to always, that I used to get a lot was, empty, or people who are about to be empty nurses. I just hope he comes back home after college. I'm not sure there's that much here for them. I just really like for them to come back home after college. And I said, well, we're not building the city they want to come home to. We aren't offering the things that kids coming out of college want to see now. You want more kids to come back home, you got to be willing to give them something to come home to. So we started looking for things to have them come home to, more technology, a little bit more openness, a little bit more edge, a few things that got us on the front page of the paper, great sports, more livable situations. How about some free streetcar transportation for you? You know, how about a city that people say, hey, this is the next hot thing? Those are the types of things. How about some opportunities? How about some tech things that were going on here that weren't going on anywhere else? That a lot of kids really are into their tech and they want to have access to the cutting edge stuff. This is kind of one of those places to be. That's what we did. So you show them how these things are all connected. You show them how these things can be achieved and how it will not only benefit the city as a whole, but them individually. And they say, okay. And then you win, and then you celebrate, and you do it again, and do it again, and you do it again. And then you do two things. One, the streetcar expansion that we did too early. My gut said, don't do it. The baseline isn't built yet. It's kind of like selling a car that you don't have pictures of. I said, don't do it. But we thought, well, we've got a Secretary of Department of Transportation who's a friend of mine, Anthony Fox. I'd been to dinner with him the night that he had gotten appointed to that. And then he brought in one of those big old checks, the largest grant for a streetcar and the largest grant of that type in the country for that year, brought it in personally, then brought a second grant in to help with the bus line. They said, well, he's not going to be there the next time it comes up. Okay. And Obama was there, very supportive. Okay, fine, we'll do it. We lost. And it irks me to this day because it continued to do exactly what we were trying to avoid doing, and that is it continued to support the basic racial divisions in the city when you go north and south. And that was going to go east and west and cut across those. And I was unhappy.
Unhappy.
And then the one that really made me mad was when we lost universal pre-K. You know what I was talking to you about systems? Education system, you know, you read the news about how our high school kids are falling way behind in reading and math. And then I was reading some stats the other night about how 3rd and 4th graders are way behind in reading and math. And I'm saying, you know, if you want, and then everybody's trying to come up with programs. We need more tutors. We need more readers. We need more stuff. We need more of that. I said, if you're looking for the leverage point to change all of that, there's a big one that's called 0 to 5, and ain't nobody doing nothing in that 0 to 5 space. So it's kind of like waiting to, you order a car, you're going to have it custom made, you're waiting 9 months for it, okay? When the car is 92% built, you decide you want to change stuff in it. That's what we do. We let kids get their brains 92% developed, send them off to something, and then expect things to change when they hit kindergarten and 4th grade. And when they hit kindergarten and 4th grade, a lot of them are already 2 years behind. I'm sorry. Maybe that has something to do with when the finished product comes out, they're not doing as well as they should. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I don't get it. If we were thinking more systematically and within systems thinking context, we could figure that out. Now, here's the problem. We might figure it out. As a matter of fact, I think we already know it. The question is anybody willing to pay for it? And the answer to that is, sure as heck ain't the government. And most people don't see the need. It's not my kid. But if you look at the system, it's your problem, whether it's your kid or not. That's just me. Another thing. Sorry, I went off. Told you.
Speaking of going off, let's talk about social media.
Oh, boy.
So social media was, believe it or not, just beginning to spread far and wide in 2011 when you took office. Were there any self-imposed rules that you had about social media use? And do you think it adds value in public discourse and political discourse today?
It adds value in those areas as long as you can stick to those areas and talk to people who aren't crazy. So yes, it adds value. I think all conversation adds value. Even if the value is negative, you know what not to do. So it adds value, but it's just crazy with how nasty things are and how if you don't believe what I believe, you're not worth living type nonsense that you see on it. So to that extent, it's somewhat of a distraction. And yes, there was a rule. I had a very active Twitter operation. And I did my own tweets, which was dangerous in and of itself.
Can confirm, he did his own.
It was definitely dangerous in and of itself. And I was generally pretty good. But there was a rule that came about after a particularly tweety night that I was banned from tweeting after 2 scotches, okay? And that was a lesson well learned. But there would be people saying things, and I delighted in trying to find some funny way of making them regret that they had said it. And generally, I was successful, but there were a couple of times when it was just like, you know what, I'm about ready to jump through this phone, which weren't helpful. But social media has a place. The problem is that that place is being abused, it's being monetized. The abuse and the conflict is being energized on purpose because that's where you get the money, and people are falling right into the trap. You can say whatever you want to under anonymous. And once you get into one of those arguments, you're going to keep going back to that argument and talking to that same person and arguing with them. And along the way, pop-up ads show up, and you start buying the little things here and there. And they monetize everybody's anger, and therefore they want to encourage everybody's anger. And we accommodate them by being angry, which solves no problems, helps nobody, and does nothing at all for the stability of the city, state, or country.
And doesn't help with systems thinking at all.
It does not help with systems thinking. It becomes linear thinking. Mm-hmm. It becomes, frankly, it just becomes mob thinking. It's totally uncontrolled. And then you get the same problem. You get a sideline input, and all of a sudden we're off on a different tangent that somebody said in tweet number 89 in response to original tweet 14, which was reposted by the president.
I have one final question, and then we're going to go to some audience Q&A, so get your questions ready. And virtual viewers can send their questions to dolequestions@ku.edu. This last question is one that I'm going to ask every guest in my series. So if you come to each of the sessions in the series, you can compare and contrast how they answer it. So here's my question for you. You don't have to look very far in today's politics to see that civility is often missing from public discourse. That can have a damaging effect on civic engagement and participation in the democratic process. So my question is public leadership, democratic participation, and civic participation still worth it, or is it just too messy?
Well, if you take the attitude that it's too messy, then the only people who will be in public leadership and politics will be those who think it's not messy enough. And that's a bad idea. Frankly, that's where we are. You know, you have to understand the anatomy of a politician's mind, not a public servant's mind. There are differences, but a politician's mind. I want to run for office against you. You've been in office for 4 years. You've created some policies. I'm not going to run against you and say how great your policies are. I'm going to run against you and say how crummy your policies are, and that you're a crummy person on top of it. And that way people will be able to make a distinction between me and you. Now, it doesn't matter that half of your policies are really good policies and they actually help people. That's not my problem. I have to tear your policies down in order to make people think that I got a better answer. So all those people working for you in the government trying to make those policies come true, when I get in office, I'm shifting them to another problem. So we create these chronic problems, and when somebody has a solution to a problem, under the political scenario, the next person wants to do away with the solution because it's not his or her solution. So we never solve chronic problems because we never have sustainable solutions. And that happens every 2, 4, 6, or 8 years, depending on who you're voting for and at what level. That's a problem. The system needs to be changed. But before we can change the system, remember, change your attitude before you change your system. Before we can change your system, we have to have people with the right attitudes in the system who stay in the right attitude long enough to work those changes through. And recognizing how long it takes to get things done in this country on a legislative and social level, it takes a while. But we have to continue to find good people who really care about serving the people they were elected to serve and who put that before personal ambition or anything else, who will stay there and be the canary in the, where is it? Canary in the where? Coal mine.
Yeah.
Before the system tilts out of balance and hopefully tilt it the other way. Yeah, it's worth it. It's always worth it. I don't know how we can ever find an excuse for not recognizing that if we are not in some way serving other people other than ourselves in some way, and if you can pick your own way, but if we're not doing that, then we're really not being very good human beings, because we're all interdependent. We have to be of service, and public service is a great service. If you're going to do it, I say start at the local level where you can really understand that the problems that are created at the federal and the state level always wind up at the local level, and that's where the problems have to be resolved. So you can enhance your problem-solving skills by actually dealing with the problems that other people create for you. Instead, when you get to the upper levels, it all becomes whether you're a D or an R, and whether your hair doesn't move in a gale because you've got it lacquered down, you learn to finger point, and then when you're asked any question, you learn how to not answer it and avoid talking about it and move on to something you want to talk about. That's not what public servants do. Public servants act in the service of the public. Well, we have a lot of politicians acting in the service of themselves and their party. So yes, it's worth it. But not for me, I'm done.
I'm glad you said that. We're now going to take questions from the audience. Remember, if you are online and have a question, you can send it to dolequestions@ku.edu. We have some students who are going to be walking around with a microphone, and they will help make sure that we get to everyone. And also, please remember that the Dole Institute's mission is to foster civil and respectful discussion, so keep that in mind with your questions. We've got one here and then one right over here.
Hey, how exactly do you deal with like a crisis that happens, like?
I'm sorry, say again.
How-
Pull your mic down a little bit from the mouth.
Like this?
Yeah, there you go, that's a little clearer.
Thanks. How exactly do you deal with like a sudden crisis that happens, such as COVID or something along those lines that you could never have seen coming in the first place?
Well, you have to have some certain, well, first of all, every city has an emergency plan that covers every emergency you can think of. So you first go to that plan and have to make sure you're implementing that. Secondly, you have to determine what's the nature and extent of the crisis. Where is it going to affect most? Is it medical? Is it infrastructure? Is it fire? Is it weather? And you have to make certain determinations based on that. From a mental standpoint, it's really the best thing you can do happens long before you get to a crisis, and that's to make sure you have a staff that knows what they're doing, they're well trained, they're organized, and they know how to react when there is a crisis, because you can't do it alone. This is where it's also important to have relationships that are across the board. You need a relationship with police and fire. You need a strong relationship with your city manager so that you can huddle together and have a conversation and plan how to respond to the crisis. So that's the mechanics of it. From an emotional standpoint, you try to remember what your first and most sacred obligation is, and that is to take care of your citizens first. Everything else is secondary. So whatever you have to do to make sure that you are helping the most people in the most dire circumstances, regardless of where they are or live, then you do that, and then you protect property and all the other stuff. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Thank you.
January 2012, we had a terrible, terrible ice storm. And I remember it shut down the Midwest. Minneapolis, Kansas City, St. Louis, Chicago was impacted, Des Moines was impacted. And I remember seeing video footage of these cities and multi-car pileups. And we didn't have to navigate any of that. And it was a real case study in how crisis leadership really involves consistent communication with the public. This guy and our city manager, they were on TV, if I remember correctly, it was every hour on the hour. We were at the Emergency Operations Center and giving consistent updates, even if the update was, there's no update, the weather's exactly the same as it was 20 minutes ago, don't get out unless you absolutely have to. It really showed that when you have that constant communication with the public, and there is an authoritative leadership figure that they trust, that they'll listen. And so we kind of didn't have to deal with some of those terrible car accidents and things like that that other Midwest cities had to deal with that January.
We also had the support of the business community, because one of the things that we did was we asked the business community to alter its business hours so that everybody would not be on the road at the same time. And they did it. Mm-hmm. There was some grousing. There were a couple of cave people in the business community, but everybody did it, and it worked out very, very well. You just have to have, first of all, people have to trust you, and you have to trust them.
We had another question over here.
Sure. You got to hold it? Yeah. Hi.
Hi.
I'm curious, Mr. Mayor, if a president unilaterally dropped, we'll say, Iowa National Guard soldiers into Kansas City and told them to go fight crime, what would be your response?
What would be my response? As mayor or as an individual?
Your choice.
As an individual, I'd probably call up a whole bunch of people, cuss a lot, and say, this is nonsense. What can we do about it? And how do we organize to make our sentiments known? As mayor, I would first try to find out if there was some way that this could be a win-win. I don't believe that there are National Guard troops fighting crime. They don't seem to be in the areas where they say the most crime is. Therefore, I am suspicious of that explanation that they're fighting crime and have a better idea of what they may be doing. This is a publicity stunt. It's a high-profile distraction, and it is also a way to infiltrate ICE into your community in a way that you can't really avoid, so that they can do whatever nasty crap they want to do. I'm sorry, I'm not in favor of it. I'm sorry if anybody is, but I'm not going to hide it. What's going on in this country in terms of snatching people up off the street is wrong. I don't care whether you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, or dead. This should not be happening on the streets of America, period. Number two, as mayor, first I would hope that I could talk to the governor, but in this state, I'm not sure that that would necessarily, in Missouri, I don't think that would necessarily be helpful. I would make sure that our police knew what to do and that we were very clear on what we would and would not do. I would want it committed in writing. I would not want some verbal handshake. I would want to make sure that in any things that they were doing, that we had a police officer present to observe and make sure that they knew what the laws of our city and state were and not act out of those laws. And then I would make sure that the citizenry knew that they were there, knew how they should act, and telling them it is perfectly okay if you stand on every street corner and yell and scream and boo and exercise your First Amendment rights. There would be no Second Amendment rights tolerated, okay? I would also make sure that I was in dealing with the media and telling them this is all nonsense. They are not in the crime areas. Just like in DC, they are down at Union Station and at the World War I Museum picking up leaves and trash off the lawn. So obviously not a whole lot of crime fighting going on there. Secondly, I would want to have some indication of arrests that were made, what the charges were and the circumstances. So I would want paperwork filed, which under the current circumstance, they don't have to do. All of those things. And then if there was anybody that was going to be jailed, housed, or kept in any facility in the city of Kansas City, Missouri, they would not be able to be taken out of there without due process, period, end of story. I can think of a few other things, but I don't know if we have time.
Yes. We got a question here and then one couple rows behind.
Mayor James, first of all, thank you for giving us some of your time today. We really appreciate it, and we thank you so much.
Well, my time is no more valuable than your time, brother, so happy to share it with you.
Given the state of our country today, I agree with you 100% that any change that's going to happen is going to have to start with attitude. So I assume that attitude change would be in a multiple step process. If that's true, how do we go about starting to get attitude changed? And if we are able to get it started, how do we keep it going? So my question is, how do we affect attitude?
I think you start with honesty and openness. And one thing that I would say, if we were going to look at changing the attitude of this country, I think that rather than all the social war nonsense of FAFO and all the things that are posted and people laughing at other people because they voted one way or the other, I get that, and I have to admit every now and then it's pretty damn funny. But the reality is that we should be apologizing to people who felt that they were so alienated and so left out of the system that they felt like they could latch on to just about anything and think it was better, and then refuse to recognize factual data to the contrary. So we might want to start with an apology to some people and say, we should have been listening to you, we should have paid more attention to you, we thought we knew what you needed, but we never bothered to actually ask you, so let's start over. What can we do together that's going to make your life and mine better? Let's start with that. And if we get enough of those types of conversations going, maybe we can get some people off the ledge and working a little bit towards something and say, well, not everybody that I thought had two heads has two heads. So we have to start making sure that our attitudes towards other people change so that we can approach them and have a conversation about something that's real. Until we figure that out and we start to understand that what's important to me is important to me. It might not have the same level as importance to you or to you or to you, but there's some things in common. How do we make sure we all have the things in common? And how do we then make sure that there is opportunity to get the other things on top of it? But we seem to have this one-track mind. I'm either this or I'm that. And there's so much, voila. And there's so much between those 2 points that we have to recognize it, and we've not been good at it. But we're not going to get it by fighting and yelling and screaming and pointing the fingers and trying to tear down everybody else. We have to do it first by recognizing that what we have been doing has not been working, and that it's our fault, and that we need to try to change it. Let's try that. Humility is a good thing. It often opens up doors to people who are hostile to you. Saying I'm sorry, believe me, I'm married, been married for 43 years. Do you know how many times I've said I'm sorry? And I'm still here.
Yes, sir.
Mayor James, thank you for your discussion today. I've really enjoyed it.
Sure.
Just a simple question. Is Kansas City, do they need new football and baseball stadiums at this point to stay competitive in the
Do they
pros?
need them? Define need. Again, hierarchy of needs are different for different people. On their hierarchy of needs, yes. On a lot of people's hierarchies of need, probably not. On a city's hierarchy of need, a little bit closer to them than no. I spent some time on YouTube the other day looking at the new NFL stadiums that are built or being built, the new college stadiums that are being built or have been built, and I'm looking at our stadiums and saying, yeah, I kind of get it. I mean, this is kind of like, I loved my house on Manheim Road. I did. It was a big old Missouri limestone house, 4 usable floors, big floor plan. I loved it. It had a lot of leaded and bevel glass, a lot of wood and all this other stuff. It was great. But it lacks some of the things in today's houses that I really like closets that are bigger than that, you know, and things that are more leveled out and not so up and downish. Yeah, they need them. Those stadiums are 50 some odd years old. We don't live in our houses that long. Those stadiums take a lot of traffic. Could they stay there and play? Probably, with some renovations. Chiefs, yeah. Royals, no. I don't think Royal Stadium is worth renovating. Chiefs Stadium, they can renovate. It's been renovated, it was renovated right. They have some plans that can do that. I don't know that Kauffman Stadium can do that. There's a lot of things that people don't see that's wrong with that stadium.
Fun fact, Kauffman Stadium was built the same year as the old airport terminal.
Yeah.
We have a new airport
Oh,
terminal.
it's gone. Oh, we got a new one. And that's exactly what people said. Do we need a new? Yeah, you do. You know why we need a new airport? Because business is taking their business elsewhere. We got turned down by the NCAA on numerous occasions because of our airport. The Republican National Convention, which I am so glad we did not get, when they first sent their scouts into town, said, we don't know what you can do about it, but you got to do something about that airport. That airport, we lost flights because of that airport. We had complaints because of that airport. They didn't want to send transfer flights into that airport because the people who got off those transfer flights did not want to be there. They weren't buying anything. You go to Atlanta, the average spend per person, I'll make this up to show you the gap because I don't have the real today's numbers. The average spend per person in the Atlanta airport was, say, $32. The average spend per person in the Kansas City airport was like $2.25. That's a lot of gap. That's a lot of money that we're missing out on. We needed a new airport. You can say the same thing about stadiums, and people can complain about the way they're financed, but sorry, reality is reality. And let me also say this. Would anybody be talking about the stadiums if the teams weren't here? You know what we'd be talking about? How do we get a team? That's what we were talking about. I grew up in this city when there was no baseball or football. It was dead.
It was Omaha.
It was dead.
Just kidding. I love Omaha.
I think Omaha might have had a team. But the thing is that nobody wanted to be here. That's when kids started saying, there's nothing going on in this city.
We have a question here, and I thought I saw a hand raise up right here. Yes. Thanks.
Mayor Sly James, thank you for taking.
I'm glad you took the time to write it down.
Yeah, I couldn't.
It better be well spoken then.
Okay, I'll turn on my politician voice.
There you go.
Using your experience as an attorney and a politician, how can we best communicate changes in the law to those who are generally adverse to an effective conversation?
Good question.
How can you effectively communicate changes to people who are generally adverse to?
Effective conversation.
Well, that's a qualifier. Because now you got two effectives. How can you effectively present changes to people with effective conversation? I think, first of all, we need to make sure that our conversation is effective. Is it effective for you, or is it effective for them?
For them, it's about the audience.
Then if it's effective for them, then they will listen to you. And then it should be an easy matter to explain the technical changes on the page and why they are there. And then you can have a conversation about whether or not you agree. But if it's only effective for you, then you're probably miscommunicating because it's not effective to them. What I think you may have been getting at is how can you communicate something that is true and accurate in your mind to somebody who simply is not necessarily going to buy that? Is that what you're after?
Yeah, or someone who's not really interested in truth. You know what I'm saying?
I do. We're all entitled to facts, but not alternative facts, that type of thing. Some people don't believe what we believe. When I grew up, there were 3 television channels, ABC, CBS, and NBC. At 5:30 at night, the news came on. You could switch from one to the other and not miss a beat in the stories that were being told. They were all consistent. Everybody was saying the same thing. Now, you can go to one of a million places and find out something. And out of that 1 in a million, probably 2% are anything close to accurate. Everything else is nonsense. But people buy into whatever their own circumstances, beliefs, and ideologies lead them to buy into. And sometimes you can talk them out of it, but usually that takes some sort of trauma. Not necessarily physical, but some change that makes them feel like, I was wrong. And then they have to get over that. But we're living in a world now where it is unreasonable to simply think, I'm normal. I think normally. I think my friends think normally. Therefore, they think like me. No, they don't.
But there's a difference, though. Like the Supreme Court decision that came out 2 days ago, that's a fact. And I've had a hard time communicating that fact.
What's the decision that came out? Which one?
The decision that overturned a federal judge ruling that decided that Immigrations and Customs Enforcement agents could not discriminate based on
that is a fact.
Perceived race and ethnicity, language spoken, and occupation.
That is a fact.
Right, but even in that scenario, I've had a tough time saying that that's true. Someone says, oh, that's not going to hold up in court, so they just dismiss that it even happened.
Well, we're talking about two different things. It is, in fact, true that the Supreme Court reached that decision. That doesn't necessarily mean that people will accept that decision as being rightfully decided. There's a lot of things that the Supreme Court has done that are factually done. That doesn't mean that there's a whole lot of people that believe that that's what they should have done. So you're probably arguing with somebody who doesn't believe that the decision was right, not that it doesn't exist. So the fact is that it exists. It is open to debate as to whether or not it is right. Two different things. One's factual, one's emotional, one's moral. Two different things. I happen to think that, yes, you're right, and no, it was wrong. Because basically what they said is, if you're black or brown, and if you speak a different language, you best hide, because we can come after you. And under the new things, you don't have to fill out any paperwork before you take somebody off the street. So they can disappear you, and under the current state of the law, under that decision, that's exactly what they can do. To me, that's wrong.
Yes, sir. Yes, you. Yeah.
Hey, so I'm Casey, born and bred, and your point about the airport and cave people it really struck home with me, because that was my initial opinion on the new airport. I was like, why did we build this new airport? But then I kind of came around to it. The more I went to it, I'm like, this is pretty nice. But earlier today, Charlie Kirk, a conservative activist, was killed in a shooting in Utah State. And they're still looking for it, but for the shooter, so we don't know the shooter's motives right now, but do you think that this is a portent for things to come in America with political assassination and just generally political violence?
Things to come? Dude, it's been here.
Well, I mean, like.
Just because it's a guy that you identify with don't mean this is new.
I do not identify.
No, but a guy that you know from media and all that, you know who he is. But this political violence has been going on a long time with people whose names you might not recall or recognize, and therefore it didn't have an impact on you, or certainly didn't happen today. I didn't mean to impugn you and say that you were a Charlie Kirk fanatic or anything like that, only that you are aware of him, but you are not aware of all the other stuff that's been happening. So when you say to come, it's already here, so it's not coming. It's present.
I guess when I said to come, I didn't mean like it wasn't there, now it's here. I mean like it's going to accelerate and increase.
As long as we have people who don't give a damn about what they say, to who they say it, and what names they call people, and how they act towards people, and are willing to do things to them that we under normal circumstances would never tolerate as Americans in this country. As long as we are able and willing to let that happen, it will escalate. It has escalated. It is escalating. We didn't have this a year ago. None of this stuff was happening a year ago. This guy has been in office for 8 months, and this country has changed in ways that we never thought it might. And where is there a brake on that engine? There isn't one. Yes, it will continue to happen, it will accelerate, and it will get worse until there's something that makes it change. So my question is, when will the American people say, this ain't us, ain't putting up with it no more, and how will they express that, and what results will it produce? Because nothing goes straight line forever. There will be a stop at some point. Now the question is that stop a bump in the road, or is it off a cliff? And I don't have the answer for that, but yes, it's going to continue to get worse. Have you ever heard people in public office talk the way people in public office talk today? Has it gotten better or worse?
Absolutely worse.
Okay, well, it's going to continue to get worse because there's no censors anymore. There's no limits to what you can say or do. Everything is accepted. The American people aren't doing things. They're protesting. Thank God they are. They're making their voices heard. But they're sitting around saying, well, we thought the courts were our last best refuge. That's quickly kind of seeming, for the first time in the history of the judiciary, I've been a lawyer for 43 years now. For the first time in the history of the federal judiciary since I've been practicing law for those 42 years, federal court, lower court judges have publicly criticized the United States Supreme Court. Publicly criticized them. Said they were biased. I never thought I'd hear that. I never thought I'd see a president defy a Supreme Court order. I never thought I'd find people who were able to buy justice. There is a developer in Kansas City who's developing property. He's also developing property in St. Louis, indicted for fraud, okay? About to go to trial until Pam Bondi's brother stepped in to represent him, and the case was dismissed. Those are the types of things that show me we got a whole lot of watching to do. And yes, it's getting worse. And at some point, we're going to have to make a decision. What are we going to do about it? And we're going to have to also come to the realization you can't wait for somebody else to do something. You're going to have to do something on your own in order to achieve whatever result you want. Another rant, I'm sorry, but you started me on this. It's not my fault.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think we have one final question here, and then we will wrap up our evening together.
Mayor, on a scale of 0 to 10, with 10 being the most likely, how would you rate the possibility of being able to impeach and remove our president?
2. We've done that, been there, tried that. There's not enough time. You would have to have a majority in the Senate along with a majority in the House. On the other hand, he's yet to test that one thing he said, that he could stand in the middle of Park Avenue and shoot somebody and nobody would do anything. Maybe if he does that, I don't know. But the political winds don't argue for that. I think the best bet is to restrict his power for the Congress to act like they were actually Congress people instead of puppies, and take back the House in 2026 and maybe edge the Senate and work from there to neuter some things, and then see what happens from a public relations standpoint. I will give this man credit. When it comes to manipulating the media and standing up at the end and looking like he's been a victim of something, he is an absolute master. Absolute master. So, I don't know, depends on what happens with the Jeffrey Epstein files. I'm not kidding.
So what I have heard loud and clear tonight is that we are in a moment where we need more transformational leaders working and doing the hard business of convening and talking about difficult topics with each other and being proud to create change in their communities. So I hope you leave with that sentiment today, because that's what this is all about. 2 weeks from now, same time, same place, I'll be joined by Wendy Dole, who is the president and CEO of United We. That stands for United Women's Empowerment. That's a think and do tank that is focused on unlocking women's economic and civic leadership. United We has conducted a lot of research in Kansas, found that if women increase their economic activity and join the workforce at higher rates, it could expand Kansas's economy by 15%. So it's going to be a really interesting discussion for men, women, everyone. So I hope you'll join us, and really appreciate your time and attention tonight. Thank you.